Good morning and welcome to our August 2017 customer webinar. Today, Christine Masters, our Director of Product Development, will take us on a deep dive into the numbers that are influencing the news industry, and we'll explore concrete ways that our products and solutions can help you thrive in this evolving marketplace. In the room we have Cherry Wolf, our Marketing Specialist at townnews.com, Teresa Nelson, our Director of Business Development, and I'm Aaron Gillette, our Marketing Director. The presentation will take about 30 minutes with a Q&A to follow. At any point, you can type a question into the chat box, but we'll hold off on answering them until the end of the show. We're going to cover traffic trends across the Town News network, the impact of social and mobile traffic, time to interact, and how we can optimize it, content strategies, and advertising industry trends. It's a jam-packed agenda, so I'm going to hand it over to Christine to start filling us in. This is going to be great.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this is just kind of the origin story behind this webinar was just that we were doing some strategic planning for 2018, and we were looking across all of these numbers that we have for our customer base, which we, as a dominant CMS in the industry right now, have hundreds of millions of page views worth of data that really tell a story about our industry and where we're going, and just some interesting things about what's happening right now. So I thought that would be a really great webinar. Aaron said that I also have to try to make it useful, which was a lot harder. So hopefully I've done that. Yeah, but hopefully it'll be really helpful to people kind of looking at some of these numbers. So just a couple of fun things up front. Our company is now 28 years old, which is pretty amazing for in the tech business. And our customer base is now all in all 50 states, which I'm not a geography major, but I think that's all of them, so that's pretty cool. Just in terms of some overall traffic trends, our network, so basically all of the sites that we track for our BLOX CMS now have 430 million page views per month and 110 million unique users per month, which if that was one unique site put together would rival some of the top 20 or so websites that in the country right now. So it's some really interesting, of course, how you depending on how you total that, but it's some very major network, and we are getting a lot of traffic now. In fact, we're seeing our page views and user sessions increase year over year just due to the strength and the growth of our company and our network. So one of the things that I wanted to go through that I thought was just really interesting is some of the engagement metrics as a whole for going across all of our sites, and comparing those to a breakdown in Google Analytics of organic traffic versus direct traffic versus social traffic, and essentially how these different metrics impact your numbers. One of the things that I would recommend that you do after watching this webinar is to compare your site to our overall site, kind of doing a cohort analytics, and just see if you're below any of these numbers, if you're above any of these numbers. This will tell you essentially where you're succeeding and things that you need to work on. So it's some really interesting data to look at. In terms of the breakdown of organic versus direct, from what Google Analytics describes, organic is essentially the non-paid search traffic coming in from search engine. The direct traffic is people who have either bookmarked or typed in the URL directly. And then social traffic is coming from any social site such as Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, etc. So this page is just talking about the overall average page views per session of a particular user. We can see it's very interesting that organic traffic and direct traffic are pretty similar, and of course much higher than social traffic, which is very interesting. Another metric to look at is the overall session duration of a user when they come into the site. Organic traffic, again, is higher. You're looking at people coming into the site. We see a lot of users who are actually, and this is a little confusing, I think. There's a lot of users that are actually They don't go to the site directly anyway. They just search for qctimes.com in Google and then go that way. So there's a big trend of people doing that. But again, we see that we have really good organic traffic coming in from search, direct traffic, and then social traffic is very low compared to direct and organic. The last one is the bounce rate. This is the number of people who bounce off the site when viewing a page. Organic traffic has the lowest percentage, 62% versus direct, very similar. And social traffic has a very high bounce rate, which means that a majority of the users who look at a page, again, they're seeing a post in Facebook about a cute dog, they click on it, they read the story, they're off again. So they're not really highly engaged in that page. They might not even know essentially the page that they're going to. They're reading the page and leaving. So the social traffic is good for page views, but not necessarily good for your engagement rates. So one thing that we've really been watching for is the rise of social across our network of sites has gone up 11% this year. And this is something that, again, is very interesting and something to watch out for. I do think that you should have a social strategy and you should be really looking at social. Just be advised and be aware that those users actually will lower your overall engagement rates. That's not necessarily a bad thing. We want to try to increase both at the same time would actually be the ideal. The other thing that I saw was really interesting is I did some kind of sorting based on, in our network, the sites that have the highest engagement rates, such as the higher sessions per user and the higher average sessions. And what we see pretty much across the board is sites that have paywalls, a hard paywall, or specialty sites that don't have a lot of social traffic, of course, are the sites with the highest engagement rates. So the more you promote social and the more social users you bring in, the lower your overall engagement rates will be. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm just saying take that into consideration as you're looking at your numbers. One thing that we always would want to try to work on is how to convert those social users, how to convert one page view into two, and there's a specific strategy that we have in terms of article-to-article navigation, we'll talk about in a minute, and different things to improve those numbers. But it's a very interesting thing to watch for and, again, look at your numbers in particular. So digging in a little bit deeper into social, this is a good graph that shows you, again, on the overall network for last month, the percentage of traffic that is coming from the different types of sources. So you can see social traffic, 31%, organic traffic, again, coming in from non-paid search, 31%, and direct traffic, 21%. People typing directly into the browser. The one thing that I think is very interesting about this is that you're kind of starting to see these user stories emerge from the different types of activities that are happening on your site. You see kind of a user coming in that is browsing, browsing articles, having multiple page views, coming to the site multiple times per day. You see the users who are coming in from search. They're looking for a particular story. They're looking for some specific information. As we can see, they are actually, again, the organic traffic should not be discounted. They are very good, engaged users. And then social users, which again, are just clicking on the site, reading the one thing, and leaving. So we can kind of see different types of users there. Another couple of things to talk about is just when I'm talking to other people in the industry or some of our partner media sites, a lot of people talk about other networks such as Twitter or LinkedIn or Pinterest, those other types of networks. And I mean, Facebook is, people kind of consider Facebook and Twitter to be the same in terms of the amount of impact they have on your site. That is not what is showing in the numbers. Facebook is totally dominant. We're looking at 92% of social traffic across our sites are coming in through Facebook. So Twitter is 6%, which is less. if I got the math right. But yeah, I mean, so this is like very dominant. Facebook is the social network of record for the news industry in terms of what is having an impact on our sites. So specifically, talking about some useful information or best practices that you can consider when how to optimize, and knowing that Facebook is such a huge impact on your site. There are a lot of things that you can do in order to make sure that your site works well with Facebook. We have a lot of support for OG tags, which are the Facebook Open Graph tags, which Facebook and Twitter both look at to find out information about your page when they're scraping the page to interact with it. We also have a lot of tools built in to support Facebook. We've got the broadcast tool, which allows you to set up multiple channels kind of based on your sections that can send posts directly to Facebook at the point when you're publishing the story. It's very, very easy and very helpful for kind of your newsroom process. You can actually set up multiple Facebook pages or accounts that are interacting with the different channels. So you could have maybe if you had a Facebook group or page for your sports team or for your sports department, or for a particular just any kind of subset, parenting or something like that you might have a group for your site, or just your normal newspaper page, your normal publisher page. Those can all be set up as channels, and you can actually broadcast to multiple pages at once. So we also have a Twitter broadcast functionality as well. So either of those you can kind of set up and make sure that you're very easily broadcasting out to those pages. In addition, we have really good support for Facebook Instant Articles, which is a new way you essentially send your articles to Facebook and they host it within their platform. So it's extremely fast and user-friendly. Obviously, there are still some ups and downs. We're still watching in terms of how much of your traffic is recommended to convert to Facebook Instant Articles. So that's something that we're still kind of looking at those numbers. But I would personally just recommend to try it out on 1 or 2 sections of your site and see what kind of conversion you get, what kind of page views you get, and if the ROI is there in terms of advertising. So very interesting, and again, some really good ideas of ways to look at that traffic that's coming into your site. The other thing that I wanted to talk about briefly was just, I mentioned a little bit about these different kind of user groups that are defined within the site based on the types of people that are coming to the site, the things they're doing within the site, and their different behaviors they have in terms of how they interact with the site. One of the products that we offer is the townnews.com IQ Engage product, which essentially looks at these different audiences and allows you to show content specific to those audiences by essentially just targeting them to the different audiences. So you can create an audience of people who come in from social. You can create an audience of people that have high user sessions to the site, so your loyal users. You can create a group of just one-time users or drive-by users, and then you can change the ad layout. You can change the types of content that's targeted to them. You can change the messaging behind how you target things to them on a per segment basis. So I think that this is just a really interesting way to engage differently with those different types of user segments. I will say that we have one of the numbers that we can talk about that's related to this is we have using the same technology to target content to users, we have a block which will show content or stories that are specifically interesting to a single particular user. So that user views a lot of sports content, then we can surface more sports content to that particular user. And when we employ this type of technique, we see that the people that are targeted with those behavioral recommendations, the actual pages per session increases by 300%. So they're seeing, instead of just one page views, they're going up 3 page views. Instead of 2, you're seeing about 6. So we see some really good engagement rates for those users who are targeted specifically with content that is interesting to them, which of course makes sense. It's kind of a no-brainer. But we have that technology available, so if that's something that you're interested in, again, which will help improve those engagement numbers, then give us a call. Another big story that we see in these numbers is, and this is kind of an obvious statement, obviously, is just the impact of mobile on the industry right now. We can see here that we've got 57% of our total traffic is mobile, and Google defines these as smartphones specifically. They break out tablet into its own category. Obviously, you can see if we combine these together, it's huge. And then we see 33% desktop. Mobile has actually grown 5% in our numbers since last year, and probably another 10 the year before that. So mobile is just very important right now. I will say, in terms of it's just something to make sure that you're optimizing and looking at closely. I will mention one other stat I thought was very interesting was just the actual flow of the different traffic types, so the different device types throughout the day. So we see, and again, this kind of tells you a story about the types of users that are interacting with your site. You can kind of see here, mobile is pretty dominant throughout the day, but it really increases right before you're going to bed, and everybody is like at the end of the day, they're checking the news, checking what's going on before they go to bed. And you can also see kind of a story here emerging from desktop users. So for desktop users, you can see that their peak time is about 8 o'clock in the morning. That's when they're at work. They are looking at news, as they log in the morning at 8 o'clock, and it's kind of tapering off throughout the day. At 5 o'clock, when everybody goes home, there's a significant drop off throughout the day, and then mobile kind of takes over. You can see the peak there. So I think that's a very interesting number. Again, we support a concept called day parting, where you can have different types of content visible for different types of the day. It might be something to consider. What are those mobile users looking for at that kind of summary at the end of the day, before they go to bed type of content? And is that something that you can promote that at the end of the day versus other things? Again, in the morning, they're logging into work. What's the summary of the things that I need to know for my life throughout the rest of the day today? So that's something that you can use that feature to really promote that content to those users. A couple other things about mobile. I will say just kind of the most important thing is just make sure that you're looking at your site with a phone. I have a lot of people that I interact with throughout the day where you're on a desktop at work and you're looking at the site all day long at work on the desktop, and a large majority of your users are actually looking at it on a phone. So make sure that on a daily basis you're looking at on a phone. We also have a lot of new features that are specifically targeted towards mobile. We have a new mobile pattern grid that is definitely worth checking out. We have a couple of other ideas in terms of in mobile, make sure that you've got a banner ad at the top. But one thing that we're seeing kind of emerging right now is don't put it at the very, very top. Try to put it right below the masthead. It has higher engagement rates there, higher viewability rates there. Try to have an ad position every 2 to 3 viewports. If you're not specifically designing a page for mobile, a lot of times what will happen is you'll end up with the right rail ads kind of stacked up together towards the bottom of the page. And what we would recommend is to try to spread those ad positions out specifically for mobile throughout the page every couple of viewports. You don't want to have 2 or 3 ads that end up kind of on the same page in mobile. A couple of real quick things about page speed. We've really been focusing on a new metric, well, it's not a new metric, but something that we're really focusing on now, which is called time to interact. And this is something that Google has really been pushing in the industry, is the concept of when you log onto the site, when a user logs onto the site, their frustration level is impacted by how quickly they can start interacting with the site itself. So they don't care that much about the full page load, because they just want to start scrolling down, looking for their article, looking for the content that they're looking at on the page. So one of this metric is essentially how soon can a user, once they come to your site, start interacting with it, which again is very important, because if they can't interact with it, after a couple of seconds, they're bouncing, they're leaving, because they think your site's broken, it's too slow, they just don't have time to wait there for an additional 500 milliseconds for your page to load. So this is something that we've really been focusing on Town News, and I am really happy to say that our actual time to interact has gone up, meaning that the statistic has improved by 18%. We've knocked almost a second off of the time to interact time from about 4 seconds to 3 seconds. So that's really good, and we're really trying to do additional things to get that number down as much as possible as well. Interestingly, this statistic, the time to interact has actually improved, but the page load size has actually increased by 5% during that same time frame. So the pages are getting bigger, but the time to interact is getting faster. A lot of that is because of some optimizations that we've made in terms of the technology behind how the pages are served. I'm probably going to do a blog post about these in the next couple of weeks here, so I'm not going to go into them in depth, but several things that we've done in terms of a new technology called HTTP2, what's called multiplexing of library files, where instead of serving a couple files at once and you have to wait for those to finish and then you download some more, we're actually able to now do many at once, which can download things a lot faster. And we've really seen the impact on all these different techniques in terms of speeding up that time to interact metric. So a couple things about content. As I mentioned before, throughout the last couple of years, we've really been focusing on some additional features that will help article-to-article navigation, one of which is the next previous arrows that we launched across all sites last year. We have seen, since we launched those arrows, they have been interacted with, so people have clicked on them specifically and created new page views 27 million times. So I thought that was a really great stat that just shows that if we implement some of these techniques, we can really help improve the article-to-article navigation and improve the page views overall. A couple things that I wanted to mention in terms of collections. This is our collections. We've actually added several new features to them over the last year or so, and I wanted to kind of just focus on them for just a minute here because I do think that they're a great way to improve engagement and page views for your site. A couple of quick examples here. One is we've improved what it looks like when you're doing a collection of audio assets. We actually have now, this is kind of a paging gallery, and you can see at the bottom there's actually a player on each individual page itself. So this would work great for like a collection of MP3s from local bands, or maybe there was a performance and you have different MP3s that you could put together, interviews where you're doing an audio interview with somebody and can put them together into a package. That would be a great way to showcase that content. We also have a special presentation for events. So if you wanted to package together different events for Christmas or 4th of July or great things to do this weekend, you can kind of package them together into a specialty display, put them as a collection on the front page or related to an article. We offer a product called the BLOX Real Estate, which actually has a specialty asset type just for real estate listings. The real estate listings have special fielded data specifically for those houses, and the collection will now show that detailed information in the card that is actually displaying in the showcase itself. One real quick thing to mention here, we've actually seen some sites who are packaging together some of their real estate listings into a content item. So as an example, the most expensive homes for sale in the Quad Cities, maybe Stars homes in our area or the historic homes in our area, and these might be homes that are up for sale, but you can package them together and you actually can remake that MLS content into a content item that normal readers who are not looking for a home would be very interested in. And again, these generate great page views because you're looking through each of those sites and seeing the ads go by as you're reading those. Another one that we have a special presentation for is for business directory. If you make a collection out of business assets, it will actually display these really nice business card presentations. So you can put together, this example is a series mode, so you can do business cards in a series mode, which is really great for things like, in this example, businesses that are opening this month, or the best pizza places in the area, a best of the region promotion, things like that would be a great idea. Another quick thing to mention in terms of content is that we have really great easy to set up support for Google AMP, which is Google's accelerated mobile pages open source product that they are kind of spearheading. And we have more than 100 sites that are now fully set up with the AMP product, and we are generating more than 7 million AMP pages per month, which is an amazing number. We are continuing to work with Google to add new functionality, and we'll hopefully in the next several months we'll actually have some additional features and information about how to set this up. Content exchange, this one we have some really great numbers coming out of this that I wanted to mention. We now have 457 partners across our network engaged in the content exchange program. So they've got content coming into the network, and then they're hosting content from the network on their site. So it's just an incredible number. Our content exchange partners just this last month created 22,000 curated articles that are freely available to your site, professionally curated by our content team. These 22,000 pages that per month will have created in the last 6 months 3 million additional page views across our network, which is just amazing. And we also have 5 different professional content providers that we have. I guess everyone's professional, really, but particular commercial content, third-party content providers that are providing content at no additional charge to the network. And again, there is no cost to set these up or to integrate with them. You can choose to send as much as you want or ingest as much as you want onto your site. There's no, I feel like some people don't believe it sounds too good to be true because there's no additional cost for it. But it is really a great partnership. And we're just kind of using the power of that huge network that we have to try to group publishers together to benefit everybody. So a couple things about advertising. One thing that people ask me this a lot is we have a targeted programmatic program where we're gathering data and behavioral information about the users to the site, and then you can use that to either target local advertising or programmatic advertising specific to that type of user. So again, if the user's male, female, older, interested in sports, interested in other types of content, you can target advertising specific to them. By implementing this technique, we've seen CPMs go up by 28%, and this is just data from the last 6 months. So that's a really, it's, again, just call your sales rep if you're interested in finding out more about this. We are seeing some really great numbers here. Another thing to mention, I just had somebody asking me about this the other day. How are we doing with ad blocking? Because we've done a couple of webinars over the last couple of years talking about ad blocking, and essentially our stance so far has been we're not seeing a huge impact across town news sites yet. And checking in on that again for this webinar, we've seen again that rate hasn't significantly changed over the last year. I will say I was trying to kind of break down the numbers a little bit more here, and one thing that I noticed that I thought was very interesting is that desktop, when you segment desktop alone, the number on desktop is 7%, which is, and then mobile, if you look at mobile, is only 0.3%. So desktop is significantly higher than mobile. Mobile, of course, is a majority of your traffic, so it ends up bringing down the total number to a lot more, to a lot less. So that's just some really interesting numbers there. We do have some features that are specifically targeted to those that you can look at if you're interested in that. But at this point, I don't know if I would recommend that. There's, again, I would recommend watching it and looking at it, but it's not something that you necessarily need to take action on unless it's specifically targeting your site. One thing to talk about, though, is, and again, I've gotten a lot of questions about this lately, is Google has announced that they are coming out with a new ad filter that will essentially look at the ads on your site and will determine if they think that they're against kind of the ad policy guidelines. There's something called the Better Ads Coalition, and they've determined what things really annoy users. And if this is, these ads are determined to annoy a significant portion of users, Google is actually going to block those ads from showing. So how this impacts your site is something that we're watching very closely, and I would recommend you also watch this very closely. Two things to look for that are happening right now. In the last couple of days, Chrome has announced they have a new Canary version, which is essentially the nightly developer version that is available in the Android Play Store that supposedly has this feature enabled. So you can go ahead and try to download that and see if it impacts your site. The other thing to watch for is the Google Webmaster Tools now has a report available. If you go to the Webmaster Tools, click on Web Tools, and then there's an advertising report for both desktop and mobile. They do a review of your site and will tell you how your site performs in terms of those better ad standards, and that will supposedly give you a hint as to whether or not you're in danger of having ads blocked by the new Chrome version when it comes out. So both of those things are something to look at, and you can also go to the Better Ad Standards webpage and see the types of ads that they're tracking. We will have more information about this coming up because it is going to be an impact on our industry, and we just need to watch for that. I mentioned this a little bit before, but we do have a couple of techniques built into the block system where you can choose to identify users who are blocking ads, and then you can give them a message that says, we detect that there's an ad blocker on your site. Please purchase a subscription or disable ad blocking if you want to view the page. You can put up a paywall, or you can just give them a message saying that, will you please whitelist us, or will you please not block our ads? Journalism is important, etc. So we have a couple different techniques that are available there. So one more thing, there's a lot of stuff going on with advertising in the last, this year in particular. One other quick thing to talk about is this thing that they call viewability scores in advertising. So the viewability score is essentially what is determined as an ad on the page needs to be in the viewport of the page, more than 50% of the ad for more than 1 second. And if that metric is hit, then that's count as that ad has been viewed or viewable. So I'm doing like quotes, but you can't see them. But so the ad is viewable if it meets those metrics. We have seen that the advertising industry, and this is a dramatic shift that's happening right now, advertising industry is the percentage of CPMs that they get for ads that they can now determine are non-viewable are going way down. And so having viewable ads and being able to report that those ads are viewable is very important. At Town News, our average goal right now is 42%. We're hoping in the next little while here to increase that to 70%, which is the kind of the industry goal. And this is something that bidding networks are starting to really look at in terms of what they're buying. So a couple of things to look for ad viewability. Number one, things that are lazy loaded ads such as infinity scroll ads or anchor ads at the bottom of the page that have a very high viewability rate because they essentially don't load onto the page until they're viewable. Those, which are available at Town News, those things are great to employ. We also have an infinity scroll option that has a sticky ad which kind of follows you down the page in the right rail on desktop. Again, another great technique to increase your viewability. We're coming out with a bunch of additional features that are specifically kind of targeting this particular problem as well, that we will be in the future doing a lot of deep dives into and kind of best practice, based on those specific techniques that we will get into here. And another couple of quick things, just one thing that we thought was really interesting is the 320 by 50 ads on mobile pages have a higher viewability rate. Leaderboards at the very, very, very top of the page have a low viewability rate, even though they're at the top. Most likely because people just start scrolling on the page and then they miss that top leaderboard. We recommend putting that below the masthead instead, that has higher viewability rates. And then obviously focus on page speed, very important. If the page takes a really long time to load and the ads never have a chance to load before the user clicks off somewhere else, that will reduce your overall viewability rate. So again, something to really watch for, and you'll be hearing from us a lot more about this in the upcoming weeks here. So I think that's about it. Hopefully I didn't go too fast, but
Really great stuff and a lot of it.
Okay, good.
And we do have a few questions. Now would be a great time if you have questions you've been sitting on to type those into the question box in GoToWebinar. But I'll start working through them here. Can townnews.com help partners like us set up reports in Google Analytics that would help us compare our numbers to the global numbers presented today?
I would have to look into that. I know that there's there might be ways for us to do that we can look more into that. I don't know how to do it in Google Analytics though, but that's a good question that we can look into that more deeply.
Okay. Will you email these slides or will this webinar be available on townnews.com? Yes and yes. We will process the webinar today. It will probably be posted, the video will probably be posted to the website either today or tomorrow, and we will send an email out to this list when it's ready to go. We'll also include the slide deck so you can download that as well. Can you explain Open Graph OG tags on Facebook?
Yeah, so Open Graph is kind of an industry standard that different platforms have come together to declare. Is basically just additional metadata that can be added to the page. So for example, there's an OG tag for the title of the page, the URL of the page, the style of Twitter cards, etc. So there's a whole bunch of different types of metadata that can be added. And we kind of support all of those. Mostly we gather that information automatically from the site itself, but there are some tags that you can set up. There's a metadata section in the URL properties where you can add additional metadata per section. For example, there's a default image that you can add that will be used, for example, on Facebook or Twitter when they're showing a post that has no photo, for example. So again, just look in the URL properties of the block editor.
Where is the mobile pattern grid located in BLOX CMS design blocks?
Yeah, so this is the overall grid structure that kind of determines where the regions are for your site, and that's available in the URL properties. I believe it's the general tab, and I think it's called grids. We have, I think, probably maybe 5 or 6 different grids that are available now. Boxy and pattern grid, and there's a bunch of different ones, and that just determines the layout of the regions on the page and essentially the behavior for what happens when it goes into mobile mode. The mobile pattern grid was specifically designed so that it had spaces every couple of viewports when it's in mobile mode, so that way you can have content and then add and then content and add. And it really allows you to increase the number of ads on the page without being obnoxious about it, I guess. And you want to try to just integrate the ad positions throughout the content so that they're not overwhelming and that they don't stack up together. So you could go create a test URL on your site and then apply the pattern grid to that, and then just see if you can. I will admit that it's a little confusing to try to get the right layout there using the fixed positions in contrast with the content. If you want to look at an example, would be like the billingsgazette.com. They're using the mobile pattern grid, and you can look at that on mobile and how their content is interspersed in a pleasant way with the ads on the front page.
Can we see ad blocking metrics for our particular sites?
Yes, there is I think that either we have this right now or we will have it in the next couple of weeks. That will be a new document on all the different tag manager and analytics metrics that are available. There's several kind of new properties that we're going to make available to GTM, and those will be available in a document that will be out in the next couple of weeks here, like mid-August. So take a look for that. We can probably help you with this. If you want to submit a customer support ticket, they can help you set that up as well.
GTM is Google Tag Manager, correct?
Yeah, Google Tag Manager. We're actually in the next core version of software, we're doing kind of a built-in solution for Google Tag Manager where it's a lot easier to set up. And then we'll have a bunch of data layer elements that are integrated with our software that communicate directly to Google Tag Manager that allow you to gather these data items much more easily.
Did I hear correctly? Lazy load technology is available on all townnews.com sites.
So we have a couple of ad spots that are by nature lazy loaded. Our infinity scroll ads, when you turn on infinity scroll and you're scrolling down the page, those ads they don't load until at the point where the user is coming into the page itself. So those are lazy loaded, as well as gallery ads. Gallery ads, when you have an ad inside of a gallery slider, like a paging gallery, those are all lazy loaded. So it depends on the exact position, if they are essentially loaded at the point where they're in the viewport, and then that gives them a higher viewability rate. I will say though that we are working on additional features additional ad positions that will have a high viewability rate also, as well as ways that we can convert an existing position, an existing block into a lazy loaded block.
Now, when you're talking about non-ad images, lazy load is available.
Sorry, for pictures.
Yeah, in terms of pictures.
Yes.
Yes, lazy load.
Exactly.
So for site speed and stuff like
right.
that, you reap the benefits.
Yeah, almost all of our images, meaning like the news photos and things on the page, are lazy loaded, which means that they're not loaded as part of the download of the page, but rather they're loaded when they come into the viewport and they're actually needed by the user. That cuts down on the front loading of the page and then kind of distributes loading of the page throughout. But ads usually ads are loaded with the page itself, which contributes to lower viewability of ads that are outside of the frame that the user is looking at. So the more ways that we can improve, make sure that the ads don't load until they're viewed by the user, or soon to be viewed by the user, that will improve viewability rates.
How do you measure viewability on townnews.com sites? Is there reporting that indicates viewability that the customer can see?
Yes, this is if you're using DFP. DFP has specific guidelines for viewability. We don't have that in Ad Manager because most of those are local ads. But in DFP you can see that. And I will say, I mean, technically the way that viewability is found is these ads will have like beacons built into them, and those beacons trigger when the ad is on the page. So they are actually able to see from a technical perspective if their ad loaded within a viewport, if it's on the screen for someone to see, which is new technology that they've had in the last couple of years, that they will now be able to tell if they can see the ad that way.
Great. Well, it looks like that is all the questions at this time, so if you want to advance to our wrap-up slide here. If you do have a question, feel free to type it into the question box and we'll get to it, but I'll go through this in the meantime. There are lots of ways to stay connected with Town News. If you have if any of the products or services we've discussed are things that you do not have access to and are interested in signing up for, please contact your sales rep. Our documentation on everything Christine discussed is available at help.blockcms.com. You can always call support at 800-293-9576 or visit support.townnews.com. Our partner community is a great place to swap ideas and learn from what other townnews.com partners are doing, and that's available at community.townnews.com. And you can follow our service status, the status of all of our back-end servers and services and stuff like that at townnews.status.io, and you can actually sign up for notifications there. You can also follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And we offer a wide variety of email newsletters and other communication, and that's available. If you visit townnews.com and click news, you will see a sidebar there that says stay connected, and you can sign up for newsletters there. Newsletters and announcements and stuff like that. So thank you very much, Christine. This was a really cool look behind all the numbers, and thanks everyone for great questions as well.
Awesome.
So
Thank you.
We will talk to you guys at next month's webinar. Thank you.